Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody knows that the bird is a word. Well, a bird. Everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner with a don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody's talking about the bird.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Word. And today we're returning to our regular programming. We're going to be drawing random topics from Rando Hat. As you can see,
Rando
absolutely
Hat.
Filled. We've got enough for over a year here, so we'll see what comes out. We're joined again today by our panel, Adam,
Megan,
Mike,
And Jason.
all right, let's get rocking. I'm going to shake this up.
Rando Hat.
Rando Hat. Who wants to pick from Rando?
I'll draw from
Okay.
Rando Hat. I haven't done this yet.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
What do we
Today's
got?
topic is we are at the top of the food chain. There's the topic, folks.
We are at the top of the food chain.
Who's going to start us off?
Well, I mean, this is some dumb fucking shit we hear all the time. All the time, people are saying, "Oh, you know, we're at the top of the food chain." Be like, I didn't know food was in like the life was organized in such an orderly chain-like fashion like that. Because I'm pretty sure if you go into the jungles of Sumatra, you're not the top of the food chain.
Why?
I don't know.
Because there's all kinds of other guys out there that are gonna eat the fuck out of you.
I mean, scientifically, how the food chain works is sunlight goes to the plants, like nutrients from the earth go to the plants, and then herbivorous animals eat the plants, and then predator animals eat those herbivorous animals. Most of the time, that's what happens. We're not a predator animal. We can't chase after things or eat them alive, or, like, if you tried to, you're insane. Like, you're a psycho if you're chasing after a squirrel thinking, that's dinner.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I've actually seen on YouTube a person trying to, like, he found a dead rabbit on the side of the road and actually tried to eat it. And yeah, he couldn't even get past the fur, so
He kept going.
Yeah. I highly doubt we were ever meant to hunt like
Yeah.
that, you know, so.
His throat just turned into like reverse, right? It's like nothing's going down, it's all coming out.
Yeah, it was pretty funny actually. But yeah, when you think about it, like, being at the top of the food chain, like, you could, if you were to just go out in your garden without clothes on, you would see pretty quick that you're not at the top of the food chain. You have some of the smallest creatures eating you, you know what I mean? So
That is actually a really good point.
Yeah. So, let's agree, like base wise, like this concept that Megan just kind of like laid out, that it was like it's a very simplistic concept of what actually happens out there in nature, right? I mean, it's more like a very diverse food web, right?
Yeah.
It's very interconnected and very very delicate, right? But you know, to rely on this very simplistic thing such as plants, and then one type of animal eats those plants, and then carnivorous animals eat you know, those animals there. It's very simplistic, but I think it's a lot more very, very diverse than that.
Yeah, because you have, you know, creatures in the mid, like the herbivorous creatures. They don't all get eaten by the predators, because there's not as many predators, right? Predators are kind of like population control for nature, right? They get the sick, the weak, you know, the not the strongest from the herd, right? And then even amongst those higher up animals, you have, as Mike said, you have all like the insects and the small, like blood-sucking leeches and mosquitoes and parasites and stuff like that, feeding on the higher animals, right? So it creates this like really interwoven web of everyone is kind of feeding on everyone and everything is kind of in balance. But then you look at humans and what we do, there's no fucking balance with what we do. We're just like this gargantuan like virus that sits on top of everything, and we just hoard and kill and just crush everything and just eat everything and just manipulate everything to be like, we just grab this web and just fucking rip it apart. Like, we are not part of this web at all. We're like this outsider fucking creepy weirdo that sits on top and just breaks everything.
It's kind of like,
We just oppress everything in that group.
yeah, it's kind of like if you were competing in a competitive sport and then you broke everyone else's legs in that sport and then you got first place because everyone else had broken legs and you said, yeah, I'm at the top of like the running championships. Like, well, no, you broke everyone else's legs. They didn't have a chance to compete
Right.
with you.
Yeah, but if somebody happens to come out and break your leg, you know, you go after them with like your whole posse and you kill them so that they can't do that anymore because you are not part of the food chain. You're not going to be anyone's victim. Hell no. You know, because if you look at what we actually do, a runner in Vancouver goes off into the woods, goes running and becomes, you know, bear food or cougar food, right? What do? We don't celebrate, oh yay, a human contributed to the food chain, right? No, we go out after them with guns, which is, you know, we're not born with guns, not our natural tools. We hunt them down and we kill every single one until we're feeling like we're in a better situation.
Safe.
That's not contributing to the food web or the food chain. That's dominating it.
As you were saying, the whole purpose of a predator species is to pick off the sick and the weak and things like that, keep the bloodline strong and stuff like that, keep the species strong, keep other species strong. But with humans, we tend to go after the biggest and healthiest animals, and you know, we just degrade the populations.
Right.
And
That's a
and
very
also
good point.
farming is something that's totally unnatural and, you know, a weird concept. And you know, basically slavery, there's nothing natural about that.
Nope.
So, yeah, we can't claim to be at the top of some food chain when there is no chain there. We've ruined the chain.
Right.
So if there ever was a chain, it's like you were saying, it's more of a web. But
We're actively just wrecking the fuck out of that web.
right,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
going at it in a way that like a predator species would never do.
Right. Right. Because if you look at the way your average, now people are probably going to be like, oh, this is crazy. But if you look at the way the human animal behaves, we don't behave like any other mammal or reptile or any other species. Every other species has this innate ability to live within the limits of their environment. If there's limited resources, you know, they won't keep spreading because there's only so much stuff for them. So they'll get to a certain level, and then through the natural balance, you know, they'll kind of limit themselves. If you look at humanity is like fucking disease, man. We're literally follow the path of a virus. Like, we just continuously expand for no reason. We offer no tangible benefit to the natural environment. There's not a single thing humanity gives back to the natural world. I've asked so many people and no one has yet to give me a single answer of something that we return to the natural environment, the way that we feed back into this system. And I mean, we just expand and expand and expand and keep consuming more areas. And the only way for us to continue to exist, it seems to be just this continuous virus-like expansion forever, which is inevitably is going to end because it's a finite planet with finite everything. You can't have. It's like capital. It's the same shit with capitalism. How it's this. Everyone knows it's an unsupportable, unsustainable system because you can't have finite growth in a. I mean, you can't have unlimited growth in a finite world. It's the same thing with human population. Okay, you cannot just keep having more people all the time, because eventually shit's gonna run out. Like
Yeah, and how does that fit into a food chain when one particular species just, overpopulates? And then the weird thing is, we overpopulate, and because of, we got this, we keep 60 billion animals enslaved just so we can consume them. And we grow the food to make that happen. We push other species to the brink of extinction, or we create situations where they are pushed into tiny little areas like deer, right? And then they're pressured, so they've got massive amounts of they keep breeding, and they only have these tiny little spaces. And then we justify, because we've dominated every other aspect of their environment. We use that as justification to go in and kill more of them, right? Oh my gosh, look what they're doing to themselves. But no, we did that to them. We put that pressure on them, right? Because of our overindulgence of our natural place on the food chain, whatever. It does not. The food chain model does not make sense. And then if we talk about the food chain, we have to talk about and be realistic about. If we're professing this to be a natural system, then let's talk about what's natural. Are we actually consuming what is natural to us, right? Like so many people I argue with online say, well, our evolution is our brain, so we were able to create tools to go hunting and kill animals, and tools to, cut them into little pieces so that they fit down our tiny little throats, right? But if you were trying to say that our ability to create technology allows us to ignore our biology and our physiology, then wouldn't the same thing apply as if you say, well, we were not born to fly, but we had technology to create airplanes, therefore I should be able to jump off a cliff and not suffer any consequences, right? That's the same logic.
that's the same fucking logic,
Right? So everybody goes, fuck no, man, that's dumb. You can't do that. But technically, if you're saying that you evolved to have this big brain to create technology to be able to eat animals that you otherwise can't, then that's the same stupid logic. You do not belong in the food chain, as you are saying as a carnivore. You are not.
No.
You're way down the list on that food chain. In that food web, we are right there. Actually, technically, scientifically, we are right alongside pigs. We're scavengers. That's the best we can do with what we were born with, the tools that we're born with. This is like an amazing cat scratcher. That's what this is. This one, dogs, right? That's all that these are good for, and picking fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. These teeth, not what carnivores use to take down animals at full speed. No, you try to do that, even if you could run alongside an antelope and get your mouth around their throat somehow. The second you try to grab them, your jaw's going to shatter because you don't have the musculature. We have tiny little muscles right in here. Real carnivores, they have these massive muscles that wrap around their whole skull so that they can latch onto a prey and take them down at full speed.
And to try to avoid injury to the jaw, like you're saying, a carnivore's jaw acts more like scissors rather than a grinder. So it doesn't have the flexibility to move side to side where it has more strength that way.
Right.
To avoid those injuries.
Absolutely.
All that moves side to side, and I do it.
Yeah.
That's like a grinding motion.
Yeah. For grinding fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. That's what that is. We're a type of herbivore, through and through.
Absolutely.
We are not carnivores.
But even if like we have the capability to digest meat, which we do, like it's not ethically right. Like now everyone knows what has to be done in order for them to have meat on their plate. And like maybe back when we were not as advanced as we are now, when we had to hunt to survive in cold climates, we had less compassion for what we were doing because it was a survival situation. Now, if someone sees a puppy get hurt, they're freaking out. Like, we don't have, like, biologically we can digest meat, but, like, mentally and emotionally, it's not really something that we're okay with anymore if we see the process. So, I mean, that goes to show how natural it is at this point. Like, people evolve, all animals evolve, and, like, your brain develops. And we've gotten to a point where no one's really comfortable with the process that it would take to eat an animal.
I don't think we ever were.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we really have the capability to digest animal flesh? Because it causes all of the top known killers of human beings. So I don't think we've evolved anything to digest animal flesh.
I mean, just because it doesn't make you immediately vomit
Right.
or, you know, overtly sick right away doesn't mean it doesn't have health consequences.
Yeah.
Like everybody freaking out about coronavirus. 3,000 people died. Almost 3,000 people died globally in the last, like, you know, couple months. Over 2,000 people die globally every fucking hour. Every hour because of cardiovascular diseases caused by eating shit we're not supposed to be fucking eating.
Right.
But I mean, even if that didn't happen, even if we were fine with digesting meat, no consequences for us personally whatsoever, like, if we can digest plant matter, which we all know we can, and we can do it healthfully and live sustainable lives doing that, it's a clear option from one way of eating will kill someone else and one way won't. It's a clear option.
Right, because I mean, I could digest you.
Yeah.
Does that mean it's okay to eat? Right? I'm just gonna slaughter Megan right here. I'm gonna eat her, right? Megan, sorry. Maybe she's gonna slaughter me and eat me now. But that's the same thing. It's like, just because you can doesn't mean that's, you know.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's, and because we're moral agents too. Like, we have moral agency. Like, well, some of us do.
See, I think what we're getting into is the realm of this omnivorous being kind of like attitude. But what really an omnivore is like, really there's only two types of biological animals. There is herbivores and carnivores. But for some reason, there's some animals that have decided that they're going to eat other animals, probably because pressure put on them in their environment forced them to, and they had the physical ability to capture other animals and eat them. But I think what it does is, sure, you can do that, but it's more behavioral than it is biological, right? It's a behavioral way of trying to survive, but ultimately there are no omnivores that can't get by just fine on plants. Carnivores, clearly they are obligate carnivores. They don't have the enzymes to digest plants. They can't get the nutrients that come from plants to sustain themselves. They have to eat the guts of another animal.
Right.
But all omnivores can survive and sustain themselves on plants. So they've decided behaviorally to evolve to eat animals to survive. So it's behavioral. So it means you can change. And humans, we have the ability to change. But I think the thing is, as an omnivore, if you are eating animals, because your biology says you should be eating as much plants as possible, that's your natural diet, it's a trade-off. You trade health for survival. So when you eat animals, it toxifies your body over time, right? The more animals you eat, the more toxic your body becomes, the more health problems you have, which degrades your long life, right? And you trade that for just survival, where ultimately you should just do what is your biological need, and that's eat plants as much as possible. And for humans, we have no more need to use animals, and I would even argue, was it even necessary for us to eat animals? Megan, you said, you know, we needed to eat animals to sustain ourselves in cold climates, but ultimately that was just us wanting to spread like a disease around the globe. We wanted to leave our ancestral physical boundaries of what nature meant for us. So we started doing things that were unnatural. We started hunting. We created tools so that we could go out and spread like a virus into areas that we didn't belong. So we did. We can't change that. But what we can do now is go back to eating what we're supposed to, all right? And and part of that is recognizing that, you know, there's a food web, and we are not being realistic about where we should be on that. We have to really appreciate and think deeply about where we should actually be. We're really low, and we need to be respectful of that and be a little more humble. We're not lions and tigers.
And when lions and tigers eat us, leave them the fuck alone, because they're just doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah, I think to add to what I was saying before with how humans, when we hunt, we go for the biggest, strongest animals. I think that shows also how much of an herbivore we are, because if you flip that to vegetables and we're looking for the biggest, healthiest looking fruits and veggies, I think that is really what we were designed to do by nature. And I think we extended that to animals when we chose to eat animals and do unnatural things. And I think that would be our contribution to nature. Like you mentioned earlier, we have nothing to offer the natural system. I think that's where we would fit in if we were eating the healthiest, best vegetables, and then they pass through us and the seeds are planted and forests grow, but we're cutting the forest down and we're eating the wrong foods, and you know, so.
And this is why we always get new exciting people on the panel, because that right there is some shit I never even fucking thought of.
Right.
That was good.
Yep. Our
That's
contribution should be shitting seeds.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Because when you eat plants, like many plants, the plant doesn't actually suffer and die when you eat their fruits.
Exactly.
That you are actually benefiting the plant by helping them reproduce.
Right.
Right. So I mean,
Exactly.
that actually is the benefit.
That's what
You
the
just
food
give
was
me what
designed
you
for.
just answered. What no one's been ever able to answer to me. I can't ask
Awesome.
people that question anymore because now I know the fucking answer. All right. Talking about good topics, answering critical fucking questions here.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
So, food chain. Bring it all back.
The whole premise of a food chain is fucking bullshit. Anyone that talks to you about food chain is just talking bullshit. They're just spreading human supremacist fucking propaganda bullshit that just feeds into this whole idea that because humans have developed to be able to make these, you know, some of these wondrous tools means that, you know, somehow we can just get away from what nature intended us to be, which has led us to where we are now. And unless you're an idiot, you can recognize that where we're at now is not a good fucking place. And we need to do everything we can to fix that. Starting with ditching this whole idea of a food chain and returning to our natural diet, which would be plants, and doing what benefits nature. Shitting seeds everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. 'Cause even if there was a food chain, we're not at the top of it. That's just very clear.
Right.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I think, if there was a food chain, we wouldn't be in the group that would be at the top of the food chain, so we don't have a chance to be the top. So, I think a lot of the system that we live in is against what we would naturally be contributing to the natural system. I think our need to dominate everything around us is preventing us from contributing to the natural system. That's why I don't think reform will get us to where we need to be. We need to tear the system down and rebuild. And hopefully when we do that, we factor in our role, our intended role in the natural system.
Yeah, and I think this idea of the food chain really feeds into the psychology of just how fragile our ego is, the human ego, that we kind of subscribe, or we want to be seen amongst our animal peers as like the big top bad guy. But if you really think about what carnivores actually are, is they are the weakest link. They're like the most primitive species on the planet, because their entire existence depends on everything else below them, which is like 95% of all the biosphere, working in harmony with one another. If that fails, they are dead. I mean, if you think about carnivores, they have to work really hard to get their food, because their food doesn't want to be eaten. It runs away from them. The most advanced animal forms of life are those that can walk into a forest and just eat. Herbivores are far more evolutionary successful than carnivores. Carnivores, if they get injured, if they get a broken leg or something while they're chasing their food, they get a hoof in the head. If they get injured at all, they're dead. But for herbivores, we just walk into a forest and eat. Right? It is I don't know why, but for some reason, our primitive mindset is we want to be seen as the top bad guy, and we think because lions and tigers and these animals that are we think of them at the top, but are they really the most evolutionary advanced species? No, I think they're the worst, but they're necessary. But why would we want to subscribe to be that frail and that weak? I think we should really own being herbivores as being very, very more advanced, very evolved, and start thinking about eating a plant-based diet as the more evolved way of being on the planet, rather than being the carnivores who are so weak and frail, and they sit at the top, sort of the top, managing the weak, taking out the weak and the injured and the old, right? That's what they do. And we don't do that. We're just making a mess of everything. But I think if we can get people to see, eating a plant-based diet as a herbivore as being, that is evolution. That is the best position you want to be in, as from an evolutionary perspective. That would go a long way of changing our frailty and this mindset that we want to be the biggest, baddest, species on the planet.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today on this episode of The Word, where we talked about we at the top of the food chain. Join us next week for another topic out of Rando Hat. Until then,
Talk
see you later.
Bye.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a winner.